We're going to go to Ed in Alabama. Creationist claiming evolution hasn't been observed. I think that this would be...
Is Ed the creationist claiming this? Or
No, he's an atheist. I think he just wants to discuss...
okay, cool.
Ed, you tell us.
Hey, what's going on, Ed?
Hey.
Hello.
Yeah, so for the last week, I've been watching a bunch of evolution versus creation debates. And while I've learned a lot from these debates, I also learned about how these creationists can have these tactics to counter-argue against evolution. So that's why I present to myself 5 common, maybe common or maybe less than, I don't know, lies from creationists in evolution debates. So the first one I could talk about is these creationists say this current kind of animal will always produce the same current kind of animal.
Yeah.
I have a problem with this. They're focusing on the present, you know? They're focusing on the now. And what they don't realize that for evolution to work, it takes generations of, millions of years of time.
Unless polyploidy, which is what I wanted to mention, direct speciation where you can't interbreed with the parent species. Am I right or am I wrong?
None of that made sense.
Polyploidy? No. Polyploidy. So polyploidy, the the offspring cannot reproduce with the parent species, right?
You might be okay. Let me double check. Just make sure that I get what you're saying. I just want to make sure that you.
I swear I'm smart in some sense on the biology. I swear I've read a book or two.
Okay, I get where you're coming from.
Yes.
Because polyploidy is a condition of possessing more than 2 sets of chromosomes. And what you're talking about is when you talk about
flatworms and
it's what you talk about. Like we're a polyploid, we're a diploid, so we have 2 sets of our chromosomes. And so what you're saying is like when the offspring accidentally has an extra set and therefore they can't reproduce. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there'd be
that works.
Yeah, which would be direct speciation, right?
Strictly speaking, yeah, you could argue with that. Yeah. I thought you were saying that polyploidy was speciation and that it wasn't. This is a mechanism by which speciation can happen.
For fuck's sake, I was hoping you'd say yes because I've been rendering this argument.
Okay. No, it works. It works. I didn't know what you were trying to say. I get you. Yeah.
Well, there's the philosoph stuff that gets in the way. I'm gonna go with that.
No, okay. I get what you mean now because I was double checking. Like, maybe I misremember. I didn't remember what this word.
I knew something Forrest didn't know.
Maybe yes. Okay, so a great example of that then in that case. Oh my gosh, I was trying to think of what you're trying to say here. Okay, so you're saying that the parent produces offspring. The offspring has a different number of chromosomes because of a non-disjunction event probably, and then they then can't reproduce with their parents. So therefore, you have direct speciation event. That would have to happen in a few times so that you have males and females to continue breeding, or in an asexual species it would be pretty functional pretty quickly. But that asexual species would also have to be at least diploid. But sure, that can happen. A good example of that is.
So I'm right. Yeah, okay, cool.
You're pretty right. Yes. I can vibe. I'm smelling what you're stepping in. It makes sense. A good example of that would be in this part of the country, we have tree frogs. We have little gray tree frogs out here that make cool sounds. And there's actually 2 species of them. There's just one that's called a little gray tree frog, and one's called Grant's tree frog, some dude's named tree frog, and they are what we call a cryptic species, which means between the 2 of them you can't tell the difference by looking at them. There's the only way you can tell the difference by them is number 1, they have different songs, and number 2, one of them has twice as many chromosomes as the other because of that event. Okay. There was a chromosomal non-disjunction in the entire genome somehow or down the line in a parent of a descendant of these species. Just one of them didn't separate, and you have twice as many chromosomes. And that's not unheard of at all in the animal kingdom. There's some animals where that is the way sexual differentiation happens, is like the males are all haploid and the females are all diploid. Ants are this way. You could totally say that that's a speciation event for sure. If it happens big enough, broad enough, and enough times in the right species at the right time.
And plants, it presumably happens a lot, right?
Well, yeah, you have different, because wheat is hexaploid. It's got 6 copies of its freaking chromosomes.
Which wheat are you talking about?
Which what? Wheat.
Oh, never mind.
You stoner. But yeah, so like that yeah, that totally works. That makes sense. Great argument, Jmike. Thank you so much for bringing that up and educating us all. That's excellent. Yeah.
God, that could have gone so fucking terrible for me.
I had no idea what you meant. But the argument that between kinds, that there's no evolution between kinds. First of all, I dare any creationist to tell me what the fuck a kind is. I remember
Clade or
my
species.
taxonomic hierarchy. It's domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Kind isn't in there, right? And generally speaking, when you talk to them, they say, oh well, there's like the elephant kind and the tiger kind and the dog kind, the
creeping kind.
And what we were reading one of these King James Bibles earlier is creeping, flying things. What is that? But like the term kind varies somewhere between genus and order. Somewhere in there is where kinds are. And it always varies to fit their purposes. But no matter how you slice it, there's plenty of examples of changes between kinds, so to speak. The most famous ones being Archaeopteryx, which has traits of a reptile and traits of a bird. It's a transitional form between these two. Or Tiktaalik, which is a fish that was the first tetrapod able to push itself out of the water and crawl up on land and give rise to other species like, you have Ichthyostega and the like down the line. So like, no, the fossil record is abundant with different kinds or whatever it is. We have all sorts of those. But what's really important to remember is that like every single thing that's alive today is as evolved as everything else. Everything is a transitional form. And if you were, say, for example, what I usually give as an example is if you had my skeleton and my parents' skeletons and their parents' skeletons and their parents' skeletons going back for millions of years, go all the way back to, either the early Homo or back through the Australopithecines, go back 7 to 9 million years to our common ancestor with chimpanzees. It doesn't matter. There's not a single place on that line of skeletons that you can point and say, okay, that's a human, and everything else before it isn't. This is where the humans start. You can't do that because evolution is a gradient, not a ladder. It doesn't work that way.
It's not levels in a video game?
It turns out, yeah. And that's why I freaking hate, if you've seen that, it's called the March of Progress. It was this diagram produced by Rudolf Zallinger for Time magazine. And it's this little monkey that like levels up into a chimpanzee and then into a Homo erectus and then into a human. Like
A Charizard eventually.
That is such, like, to say that's an oversimplification is an oversimplification. Like, saying that that's how evolution works is like saying that the Civil War was a disagreement.
Yeah.
It's such BS. And so many people look at that and they're like, well, I never saw a chimpanzee give birth to a human. It's like, yeah, neither fucking have I. No, nobody's saying
I've never watched God make non-gods before. So
There you go, yeah.
And the thing,
Dumb argument.
the thing that always gets me with creationist arguments is like, yeah, let's just say you've proven evolution is bunk.
Mm-hmm.
That gives you not one step closer to proving that God did it.
Exactly. Because X equals 0 is not the same thing as Y equals 1. Just because you can disprove evolution, which you can't. But even if you could, you haven't done a single thing. You still have all your work cut out for you. So yeah, if you have any other specific creationist arguments, I'd love to talk about them. But I probably have heard them before, and they're all silly.
Yeah, Ed, if you want to add anything else.
Right. Well, I also have this other lie, where it kind of leads to something very different. So they do say, well, yeah, it is a very common line that creationists have claimed that they've never observed evolution, but this leads me to something different. The creationists let into some sort of circular reasoning where every time the creationists say it has never been observed, the scientists will say, oh, yes, we do have evidence, we do. And then the creationists deny, and then the scientists will point out, but you cannot deny it. The evidence right there. Don't be ignorant. And then here's where it starts. The creationists will accuse the scientists of putting in ad hominem attacks. And thus, returning back to the statement that because you gave me this ad hominem attack, you never give me proof. I still stand.
I don't know if I agree with that last one. I don't know with the ad homs. I mean, like obviously people will, but
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't know what an ad hominem is. It's like it would be an ad hominem attack for me to say you are stupid, therefore you're wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that creationism is stupid, therefore it's wrong. I'm saying it is stupid and wrong.
Yeah.
And like that's
I'm just
very
straight up
different.
insulting it.
Yes.
It's not an ad hom if I just straight insult it.
Right. It's like that's the thing about creationism is it isn't even a theory. It's just a dogmatic rejection of the evidence and of the conclusions that we were able to draw from it, and then the deliberate shoehorning in of religion. And they use words like intelligent design or creationism to try to get around the fact that it is just actually religion. Or they'll try to call what we do religion, that we believe in evolution. Scientism, yeah,
Look
exactly.
at the DI and said they changed from the creationism, like little motto thing that they had, and it just replaced like creationism with intelligent design, as if it's like changed anything.
Because it sounds more scientific if you don't know what science is. And like that whole thing is just to try to obfuscate what they're actually talking about, which is just religion. I have a book that says God did it, therefore that's how it is. And the arguments always boil down to, well, say we don't have any transitional species in the fossil record. Say we've never seen a fossil at all. You don't then get to say, I don't know, therefore magic. That isn't how science works ever. Oh, fuck. It isn't how science works ever, especially not when you're trying to actually, debunk the glue that holds all of biology together. Nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. That's what Theodosius Dovsansky said. And so without that knowledge, without our understanding of how species evolve, we don't know anything. Biology becomes this pile of random factoids that mean nothing when put together. But with evolution, those facts weave together into a magnificent tapestry that makes up everything that we know, not only about ourselves, but about agriculture and medicine. The fact that you are alive today in a society like we have is because of our understanding of evolution. The fact that you get a flu shot that's different every year is because of our understanding of evolution. The fact that you take antibiotics the way that you do is because of our understanding of evolution. The fact that when you go to the grocery store, you can buy apples the size of your freaking hand and not tiny weird little berry things is because of our understanding of evolution. And what's freaking crazy to think about is the fact that we've been utilizing evolution before we even knew what it was. Back in it talks about in the Bible, it talks about shit that you can trace back to actual evolutionary theory. Aristotle talked about actual evolutionary theory. And just because of the course of the past, arguably 400, but really especially 200 years, we've been really digging into this understanding of like how species change and like where things come from and tearing apart these old hierarchical models of biology. It has no bearing on the fact that right now we can see evolution with our own eyes, both in the laboratory and in the field. And every single line of evidence, from embryology to homology to genetics
to polyploidy,
to polyploidy, right? It's all of these things all point in the exact same direction. And that's how science works. It's not a dogmatic thing. If we were to find a single piece of evidence that went against evolution, we would either change the evolutionary model or throw it out entirely. But it just so happens that every time we find something that looks a little bit weird, we look a little closer at it, and sure enough, there's freaking evolution at work all the time. And what's most important, and I promise I'll shut up after this, what's most important is that evolution is the logical conclusion of the most basic axioms of heredity, inheritance, just biology in general. If you understand that DNA exists, that genes are heritable, passed on from parent to offspring, and that they come in different flavors, which we happen to call alleles. There's not just one eye color. There's not just one hair color. There's not just one height. There's not just one skin color. There's not just one kind of limb, right? Because these genes come in different flavors, then it logically follows that different flavors of genes, different alleles, would be better suited for life in different environments. You can have all the best genes to be the perfect freaking penguin, and you're going to die in the Amazon rainforest. And the best, most magnificently, elegantly, perfectly designed boa constrictor is going to die in Antarctica because it doesn't have the right alleles to survive there. The only difference between any two living things is their DNA. And so if you're honestly going to say that we understand all this stuff about life, but life doesn't evolve, you're just not taking what we know about life to its logical conclusion. which is evolution.
And that goes back to the potential for the saying, oh, you're using ad hominem. You're not. By saying you are willfully ignoring evolutionary evidence, it is a willful ignorance, and that's an attack on their idea, not the person, I think.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, it's an ad hominem attack. It's like, well, then read the books and give me actual refutations if you can, but you can't.
Yeah. It's deeply frustrating. Anyway, I hope that answers your questions, Ed. I hope that us ranting and raving, I say us, I hope me ranting and raving about this like a lunatic while these two people are calm and passionate about it. I hope that helps.
No, it's okay. That's fine.
Well, thank you, Ed. We're going to close up the show here. We appreciate you calling. And
Hold on.
sorry, go ahead.
I have something to say. It's a little very, very quick.
Sure.
Okay, yeah.
I finally left Jehovah's Witnesses. Ever since I was a kid, I was astounded by dinosaurs. But ever since my parents have taught me about God and Christ and the Jehovah's Witnesses stuff, I didn't get it because it doesn't match with the story of dinosaurs and all that stuff. So so it took me this late for me to say that I finally left the community for good.
Congratulations.
Awesome.
And again, you're the reason we do what we do.
Yep. Seriously. Thanks so much for being here, Ed. Congratulations on your deconstruction. That's awesome.